ladies and gentlemen. Today I want you to sit with this truth. God has a victory in store for you so profound, so personal, that it will shake the very foundation of your doubt. Maybe you've walked through seasons of confusion, rejection, or isolation, wondering, God, do you even see me? Let me tell you, He doesn't just see you. He knows you. He knows your battles, your scars, and your silent prayers. And He's been preparing something extraordinary for you. You see, the wilderness doesn't feel good. It's lonely, it's frustrating, and it feels endless. But it's not a punishment, it's a preparation ground. God doesn't waste anything, not a single tear, not a single sleepless night. He's building resilience in you, carving out the capacity to hold the blessings He has already promised. Sometimes the promise looks so far away because the problem is all you can see. But let me remind you, the size of your opposition is a direct reflection of the size of your destiny. That mountain in front of you is proof there's something incredible waiting on the other side. But here's the part we often miss. God's plans require our surrender. We try to control every detail, hold on to fear, or cling to things that no longer serve us. But God says, if you let go, I'll give you something greater than what you're holding on to. And don't be surprised when God's strategy doesn't match your expectations. His ways are higher, His methods unpredictable. Who would have thought marching around Jericho in silence would bring walls down? Or that a boy with a sling could take down a giant? Your victory may not look conventional, but it will be undeniable. When the resistance feels heavy, remember this: the enemy doesn't attack what isn't a threat. Opposition isn't proof of your failure, it's confirmation of your favor. It's a sign that you're moving in the direction of something divine. But victory requires more than belief. It requires faith in action. Pray boldly, walk courageously, speak life over your situation. God has already done His part. Now it's time for you to do yours. And when that victory comes, and it will come, it won't just be for you. Your breakthrough will bless others. It will be a testimony of God's goodness, a light for those still in darkness. So today I challenge you, don't lose hope. Don't give up. The victory God has in store for you is worth every battle you've fought, every tear you've cried, and every step you've taken in faith. It's coming, and when it does, it will change everything. Hold on, believe. The best is yet to come. Amen. Good morning, beloved. Today I want you to hear this truth deep in your spirit. God's victory is personal and is tailor-made just for you. You see, there's something extraordinary about the way God works in our lives. He doesn't give us a one-size-fits-all victory. He doesn't give us a victory that's just for the masses or something that feels distant and impersonal. No, the victory He has in store for you is as unique as you are. It's personal. It's a victory designed with you in mind, a victory that speaks to the deepest parts of your heart and addresses the most hidden corners of your soul. In the moments when you feel overlooked, when the weight of the world presses down on you, it's easy to feel like your struggles are isolated. You might wonder, does God really see me? Does He understand what I'm going through? And in those moments, He whispers to you, I see you, I know you, I have not forgotten you. You may not always feel His presence in the way you expect, but He is there orchestrating everything for your good, even when you don't fully understand it. God knows your name, your pain, your dreams, and your purpose. He has seen every tear you've cried, every sleepless night, every heartache you've endured, and He's been holding you close through it all. This victory isn't just some abstract blessing coming to anyone. It's meant for you. The journey you've been on, the battles you've fought, the moments of doubt and confusion, they are all pieces of the puzzle that God is carefully putting together. He's been preparing you for something so great, so powerful, that when it arrives, you won't even recognize yourself. You'll look back and see how God's hand has been working in ways you never imagined. You will see how he was shaping you, strengthening you, and positioning you for a victory that only he could orchestrate. This victory is yours not because you earned it or deserve it more than anyone else, but because God has chosen you. In his eyes, you are worthy of every blessing, every breakthrough, every miracle that's coming your way. When I say this victory is personal, I mean it in the deepest way possible. It's not just something God is giving to a crowd, it's something he is giving to you because he loves you that much. He knows the longings of your heart, the prayers you've whispered in the quiet moments, and the dreams you've almost given up on, and he's about to show you how real his promises are. Many of us have been through a wilderness season, a time when everything seems barren, when hope feels like it's slipping through your fingers, and when you can't see the way forward. You may have wondered, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? God, have I done something wrong? And in those moments, the enemy whispers lies, convincing you that your wilderness is a punishment for something you did or didn't do, for a mistake you made, or for something that's beyond your control. But I'm here to tell you today that your wilderness is not punishment, it's preparation. God never wastes a moment in your life. He doesn't bring you to a place of struggle to leave you there. He doesn't bring you through a hard season to see you fail. No, the wilderness is where he shapes you. It's where he refines you. It's where he molds your character, strengthens your faith, and deepens your trust in him. You may not understand why you're in this place, but God is doing a work in you that can't be done in the comfort of the familiar or the safety of what you know. In the wilderness, you learn to rely on God in ways you never could have in abundance. It's in the wilderness that you learn the depth of God's provision when there's nothing left to rely on but his grace. It's in the wilderness that you realize that what you thought you couldn't live without is actually not as important as the presence of the one who walks with you. It's in the wilderness that God teaches you to trust him even when the road is uncertain and the future seems bleak. When you're in the wilderness, God is preparing you for something greater, something that could not be accomplished unless you've walked through the fire. Think about the way God dealt with his people throughout the Bible. When he led the Israelites out of Egypt, he didn't take them the shortest route. He didn't take them straight to the promised land. Instead, he took them through the wilderness, a place of testing, a place of trial, a place where they would be tested in their faith and trust in him. But it was also in that wilderness that they learned how to hear from God, how to depend on him daily, and how to grow in obedience. What they didn't realize at the time was that the wilderness was part of the promise. It wasn't the end of the road, it was a crucial part of the journey. And so it is with you. The wilderness you're facing right now isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that God is preparing you for what's to come. He's refining you, building you up, strengthening your faith in your character. What feels like a setback is actually a setup for the victory that God is about to bring into your life. Trust that he has you in the palm of his hand, and every step in the wilderness is leading you closer to your promise. This season is not to break you, it's to make you. And when you emerge from it, you'll see that you are stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the blessing that's waiting for you on the other side. I know it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the problems that stand in front of you. Some days it feels like the weight of your circumstances is so heavy that it's hard to believe anything better could be on the horizon. You see the mountain and it seems insurmountable. You see the storm and it feels like it's never going to end. The challenges in your life can sometimes be so loud, so persistent that they drown out everything else, especially the promises that God has spoken over you. But today I want to remind you of something powerful. The promise God has for you is always bigger than the problem in front of you. No matter how big the issue, no matter how deep the pain, the promise of God is greater. The enemy will try to convince you that your circumstances are your final destination, that your struggles are the defining story of your life. But the truth is, God's promises don't just get drowned out by problems, they drown out problems. You may look at your present situation and feel like you're trapped in a never-ending cycle, but what you can't always see is that God is setting the stage for something much bigger than the problems you're facing today. Think about the story of Abraham. God promised him a legacy, a family as numerous as the stars, but before that promise came to fruition, he faced years of waiting, doubts, and seemingly impossible circumstances. His wife was barren, he was too old. Yet in the middle of all that, God spoke a promise, and it was bigger than any of Abraham's problems. The same God who made that promise to Abraham is the God who made promises to you, and those promises are not limited by your current struggles. When you're facing a problem, it can feel like the world is closing in. It can feel like you're stuck in a pit with no way out, like your dreams are fading and your future is uncertain. But that problem, as real as it is, cannot compare to the greatness of the promise God has for you. The promise is not just a future destination, it's a reality that's being woven into your present, even when you can't see it. God doesn't make promises he can't keep, and he never leaves you in a place of hopelessness without the intention of pulling you into something better. Remember, every problem you face is just an opportunity for God's promise to be revealed. You may be walking through a storm, but storms don't last forever. And when they pass, you'll look back and see how they were necessary for you to step into the greater blessing that God had in store. Your problems are temporary, but the promises of God are eternal. When God promises something to you, he is faithful to bring it to pass, sometimes in ways you never expected, but always in ways that will surpass your wildest dreams. So when you face challenges, don't let them define you. Don't let the enormity of your problems make you forget how big your God is. Keep your eyes fixed on the promise, not the problem. The promise is bigger. The promise is more powerful, and the promise is coming. Keep holding on to that truth, because in the end, that's what will sustain you, his promise, which is always bigger than the problem. Letting go of control can be one of the hardest things we ever do. We like to plan, we like to have everything in place, and we love to feel like we're in the driver's seat of our own lives. But there comes a moment in every believer's journey when God calls us to release the illusion of control and make room for his perfect plan. It's in that surrender, that letting go, that God begins to move in ways we never imagined. I want you to hear this. Your life is not a puzzle that you have to put together on your own. You don't have to hold the pieces, trying to force them into place. God is the one who sees the whole picture. He knows where each piece fits. He knows where you've been, where you are, and where he's taking you. But if you hold on too tightly, if you refuse to let go of what you think should happen, you'll miss out on the incredible masterpiece he is creating in your life. Letting go of control doesn't mean you're giving up on your dreams or your desires. It means you're trusting God enough to believe that his plan is better than your own. You're trusting that he knows the way when you can't see it. You're saying, God, I don't understand what's happening right now, but I trust that you're working everything out for my good. That kind of surrender isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the kind of strength that says, I know I can't do it on my own, but I know you can. How many times have we tried to force something to happen, only to find ourselves frustrated, exhausted, and stuck in the same place? We've all been there, thinking that if we just push a little harder, if we just try a little more, if we just do things our way, then everything will fall into place. But the truth is, we can't control the timing, the circumstances, or the people involved. We can't control what life throws at us. What we can control is how much we are willing to trust God and surrender to his plan. The Bible tells us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That means we have to let go of the need to have it all figured out. We have to stop leaning on our own wisdom, our own limited understanding, and trust that God is leading us towards something greater. His ways are higher than ours, and His timing is perfect. Sometimes the very thing you're holding on to is the thing that's blocking you from stepping into the next level of your purpose. You can't receive what God has for you until you let go of what's holding you back. When you release control, you make space for God to move in ways that will blow your mind. He will open doors you never thought possible. He will bring people into your life who will elevate you, support you, and push you towards your purpose. He will align circumstances in a way that you could never orchestrate on your own. But first, you have to release your grip and trust Him completely. In those moments when the path is unclear, when the future feels uncertain, and when the answers seem far away, remember this: God is in control. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to trust Him enough to let go. When you do, you'll see that His plan was always better than the one you were holding on to. So let go. Make room for God's plan and watch as He works wonders in your life in ways you never dreamed possible. There are moments in life when God's strategy will completely surprise you. When you're looking for the familiar route, the one that feels safe and predictable, He will often take you in a direction you didn't expect. You might think you know the path forward, you might have your whole plan mapped out, but God's ways are often unpredictable. And while that unpredictability can stir up doubt or fear, there's one thing that we can always count on: God's strategy is unfailing. It may not make sense to you in the moment, but it's always leading you toward your purpose, even when you can't see the full picture. Think about the way God has worked throughout history. He didn't part the Red Sea the same way every time, and He didn't deliver the Israelites in a way that anyone would have predicted. He didn't choose the strongest, the most equipped, or the most qualified to lead His people. He chose David, a young shepherd, to defeat a giant, and He chose Moses, a stuttering fugitive, to lead millions out of bondage. His strategies are unpredictable, but they are always perfect for the moment. You might be facing a situation right now where nothing seems to be going according to plan. You might be wondering why things are taking so long, why doors keep closing, or why the path ahead looks nothing like what you envisioned. But I want to encourage you that God is not caught off guard by your circumstances. His strategy is bigger than the problems you're facing. His plan is not bound by time, nor is it limited by your understanding of how things should unfold. When you look at your situation, you might see setbacks, delays, or confusion, but God sees opportunity. In those moments when you're tempted to give up or walk away, remember that God has a way of turning the most unpredictable situations into the most powerful breakthroughs. His strategy is never random, even when it feels that way. God knows exactly what He's doing, and He's using the very things you thought would break you to build you into the person you need to be for the blessing He's about to bring into your life. It's easy to get frustrated when things don't go the way we plan. We want to understand the why behind everything, but often God's strategy doesn't come with explanations. It comes with trust. It comes with faith. And while we might not always see the bigger picture, we can trust that God is working behind the scenes, lining up every detail with precision. His unpredictability doesn't mean He's uncertain. It means He's doing something that you can't yet comprehend. God's strategy might not always fit into your timeline. It might not make sense to those around you, but it's always leading you toward the purpose He has for you. And it's always leading you to something better than you could have imagined. There's a peace that comes with knowing that even in the most confusing, unpredictable seasons of life, God is in control. His strategy is never failing, never wavering, and always right on time. When you feel lost or uncertain, when you feel like nothing is going according to plan, take a moment to remember that God's strategy is bigger than your understanding. He's not just working in your life today, He's been at work in your life long before you knew. And when you look back, you'll see how He used the unpredictable to bring about something even more glorious than you could have ever asked for. So trust His strategy. It might not make sense today, but it's always leading you to a victory you couldn't have planned for yourself. There are times in life when the problems you face seem overwhelming, when the obstacles in front of you appear too great to overcome. It feels like you're surrounded on all sides by things that are trying to pull you down, weigh you down, and convince you that you'll never make it. The challenges feel so big, so real, that it can be hard to see beyond them. But I want you to hear this. The promise God has for you is bigger than any problem you will ever face. It doesn't matter how huge the mountain in front of you seems. It doesn't matter how long you've been waiting, how many setbacks you've encountered, or how many times you've been knocked down. God's promise over your life is greater than all of it. His plan for you is greater than the struggles you are currently enduring. And while the problems you face may look daunting, they are nothing compared to the future that God is preparing for you. When God speaks a promise into your life, it's not dependent on the size of your problems. His promise is rooted in His power, His purpose, and His ability to bring it to pass. The magnitude of God's promises cannot be measured by the trials you encounter. In fact, it's often in the midst of our greatest struggles that God reveals the fullness of His promise. Think about the Israelites. They stood at the edge of the Red Sea, trapped with the enemy closing in behind them with no escape in sight. Their problems seemed insurmountable, but God parted the sea and led them through, showing them that His promise was bigger than their problem. What looked like certain defeat turned into an incredible victory, not because of what they could do, but because of what God could do, When you find yourself in the midst of overwhelming problems, remember that you are not defined by those problems. Your identity is defined by the promises of God. And those promises are not only greater than your problems, they are unstoppable. The journey you're on, the one filled with setbacks and struggles, is simply the process of God making you ready for what He has already promised you. And no matter what you face, nothing can derail God's plan for your life. Sometimes it's easy to get consumed by what's in front of us, the bills that need to be paid, the relationships that seem to be falling apart, the dreams that feel so far away. But I want you to take a moment and remind yourself God's promise is bigger than these temporary problems. The issues you're facing right now are just that temporary. They will pass. But the promise of God for your life is eternal, unshakable, and far greater than anything you can imagine. The enemy wants you to focus on your problems. He wants you to look at the difficulty of the situation and convince yourself that it's impossible. He wants to make you feel small and powerless. But God has already declared that you are more than a conqueror. Your problems don't define you. God does. And the promise He has spoken over your life is bigger than any challenge that stands in your way. It is a promise of hope, a promise of victory, a promise of restoration. And it's a promise that will always prevail. When you face challenges, look beyond the problem. Look to the promise. Remember that the same God who made that promise is the one who has already gone before you, making a way where there seems to be no way. The victory has already been secured, and all that is left for you to do is to stand firm in your faith and trust that the promise is coming. Your problems are temporary, but the promise of God is everlasting. So no matter what you're going through, no matter how hard the road may seem, know this: the promise is bigger than the problems. And when you stand on that promise, when you trust in that truth, you will see that what God has for you is far greater than anything you could ever face. His promises will always come through because they are grounded in His love, His power, and His unshakable faithfulness. There's a desire in all of us to have control, to hold the reins of our lives firmly in our hands, to steer ourselves towards success, security, and stability. We want to know the plan. We want to know what's coming next, and we want to make sure that everything goes according to the way we've imagined it. It's natural to want control, to feel like we are the ones determining our steps. But there's a profound truth that we often overlook the moment we let go of control, is the moment we make room for God's plan to unfold in our lives. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean stepping back and becoming passive or complacent. In fact, it takes tremendous strength and courage to surrender control to God. It means recognizing that there is a greater purpose at work, one that goes beyond our understanding, and that God's plan for us is far better than anything we could ever orchestrate on our own. It means trusting that He sees what we cannot see, that He knows what we don't know, and that He is capable of doing immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine. When we try to control every detail of our lives, we limit God's ability to move freely. We box ourselves in thinking that we know best, thinking that we must have the answers, that the way we've envisioned it is the only way forward. But when we let go, when we surrender our need to control the outcome, we open ourselves up to a plan far greater than we could have conceived. God's plan doesn't always fit our timelines or our ideas of success, but it's always perfect in its timing and in its purpose. God's plan is one of growth, purpose, and ultimate fulfillment. Sometimes we resist letting go because we fear the unknown. We fear the unknown. We fear the uncertainty of not being able to control what happens next. But the truth is, our greatest moments of growth come when we step into the unknown, trusting that God has already prepared the way. Just like a seed planted in the soil, it cannot control its growth. It cannot decide when to bloom or how tall to grow, but it thrives because it is nurtured, guided, and cared for by forces greater than itself. The same is true for us. When we surrender control, we give God the opportunity to nurture us, to shape us, and to guide us to places we never thought possible. Letting go of control requires a deep level of trust. Trust in God's goodness, trust in His faithfulness, trust that He is working all things together for your good, even when it doesn't look like it in the moment. We want to hold on to what we know because it feels safe, but the beauty of walking by faith is that we are stepping into something much bigger, something much bigger, something much more powerful than anything we could do on our own. God's plan is not just about getting you from point A to point B. It's about transforming you along the way. It's about teaching you to trust Him more deeply, to rely on Him more fully, and to live a life of greater purpose and fulfillment than you could ever achieve through your own strength.